Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thursday Nighter, round three for the month of June. I am pleased to be joined by National Master Andrew Titus, who is the current state Blitz champion, an actual back-to-back Blitz champion, and the current Quick champion as well. So pleased to be joined by him.
Yep.
We do not have any announcements today, but as usual, we have our player profile, and that is of Ryan Chiroma. He is, most people probably know him. He's a fairly active player.
I think we might have lost Michael. But yeah, Ron Sharoma is pretty active in Minnesota chess. He's been in the 1900 2000 range for a little bit now. But last weekend at the castle, he scored 3.5 out of
He is on
5.
Jordan Tim, Charles Ha, and oh, lost
Hey,
me.
are you back?
Yeah, I was on my camera now.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thursday Nighter, round three for the month of June. I'm Michael Perry, and I am pleased to be joined by National Master Andrew Titus. He is the current state Blitz champion and back-to-back Blitz champion, and he is also the Minnesota Quick champion. So pleased to be joined by Andrew. Thank you for joining us.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
We have no announcements today. We do have, as usual, our player profile, and that's Ryan Sharoma this week. He is an expert with a peak rating of 2014. He recently tied for first in a weekend castle tournament with Jordan Tim, including a win over Jordan. His best wins include Joseph Wan, Tim McEntee, Jordan Tim, Dane Zagar, and Nathan Hoover. His best draws include Tim Rademacher, Jordan Tim, Charles Ha, and Jackson Wall. So looking forward to covering Ryan's games tonight. I've played Ryan 8 times. We're dead even. So he's a tough player, fun player to play against, and I'm guessing you probably have at least some experience of playing Ryan, Andrew.
I actually have not played him, so I mean,
Oh
I've
wow,
known him for a while. He's been very active in Minnesota chess for several years.
that's funny
But
that you've never played him. Wow.
yeah, haven't run into him yet. So
I believe we have his game queued up though. Looks like he's playing good old Robert.
yep. So we can definitely take a look at this. So I think Robert kind of plays this opening a little bit, right, with his e5 f5. So I don't really have a lot of insight in the opening. It's just white usually wins a pawn, and then after that, I don't think black has too much compensation, but the game does get a little bit interesting. So black goes for d5, then bishop d6. The idea here is that even though the pawn on d5 is lost, now black can safely castle. And once he does that, this pawn is going to block this bishop on that diagonal. So it'll be a little bit difficult for white to get that bishop in the game. But on the other hand, white is up 2 pawns. So yeah, development continued. And then Ryan went for this f4 move. What do you think about this move?
It seems. I guess it seems good. I'm. I immediately after f4, I was thinking, I wonder if you can play queen h5 just to be aggressive with your queen. And you have to be a little careful if you're white. Like g3, you probably can't play because he can probably just take on g3 with his knight. And you also can't play queen f3, or you blunder your rook on e1. So I'm just thinking if f4, maybe he can play queen h5. You can always bring the knight back, but then maybe the queen comes in with a check. The rook can come up to f6. But I could just be overthinking it as well.
I think something similar happened in the game. I think you were talking about like f4, queen here, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
here, g3. And I think I agree with you. If white were to go g3, I'm assuming Robert would consider taking immediately, and if takes, queen takes, and you probably at least have a draw already, if not looking for more with like rook f6, rook h6.
Yeah, he probably has to run to the center of the board. But I mean, if for some reason Ryan saw this whole line and thought he could escape with his king, I think you definitely go for it because you got to know your opponent, and pretty much everyone knows Robert likes to have crazy games. So
Yep. I think Ryan tends to get some crazy games as well, but I don't know if it's what he's looking for or if it just tends to happen to him.
yeah, and he's probably out of book unless he prepped for
Yeah.
Robert.
So instead of g3, he went with bishop e3, which makes a lot of sense. Just defending against like queen f2 check, for example, trying to stay solid on the king side as much as possible, even with all of these pieces coming in. So Robert followed up with rook f6, knight d2, rook h6, and then he brought his knight into f3. And then here he traded this knight. I'm not sure if that was necessary, but on the other hand, I think what he's trying to do is he wants to avoid something like where this knight gets in and there's just more pieces joining the attack against his king. So takes, g3. I wonder if black could go for some g5 stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, I see your point. Like, are you wanting to play g5, and if he ever takes with the f pawn, you sack on g3?
Yeah, though I guess your rook is under attack, so if g5 takes, if you were to, let's say, go bishop takes, maybe. So I have this defended, so maybe I can escape with this free rook.
True, yeah.
So maybe it doesn't work. Robert went for b5 instead, which also I think makes a lot of sense, just kind of pushing this bishop away. It looks a little bit strange just from a pawn structure standpoint, but I think like just in terms of attacking this bishop and pushing him backwards makes sense in that sense. Bishop e3, trying to stay on that diagonal, but also kind of moving the bishop away from the king side where you might want to defend. So I would have maybe considered bishop f1 and then just kind of parking the bishop on g2. And probably after that, if you're able to defend everything here on the king side, you can start pushing pawns on the queen side since you have 5 pawns here versus 3. So if you're able to create some breakthroughs in that position, you can use your pawns to your advantage.
And if bishop f1 like you suggested, and knight f6, would you play c4 to hang on to the pawn, or?
That's a good question.
Because he's threatening, well, maybe threatening, well, he's kind of threatening knight g4 and knight d5. Maybe we should turn the engine off. The engine's kind of helping us all the way. But um, yeah, he's threatening two things right here.
Yeah, I mean, I get the sense like if you're going knight f6, you kind of want to win this pawn more. Or
Yeah.
not win the pawn, but go knight g4 and kind of go against the king side. It's actually a little bit annoying to find a move here. Because I think a lot of times what people will do is they'll see a move like this and they'll be like, I need to stop it, so I'll go h3. But then one thing is like any pawn push you make is going to create a weakness, and in this case, you kind of weaken this pawn. So black might even go like rook here. And suddenly black's position doesn't look too bad.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. I wonder if you can play the pawn move up one more to h4. Because what I didn't realize is black, well, I mean, white's up 2 pawns. So maybe if we just shut down the king side a bit and let him gobble d5, maybe we're okay. I don't know.
yeah, perhaps. The one thing about, I mean, the one annoying thing about this position is if he does take this, now this bishop might start to get a little bit more active,
Mm-hmm.
especially on that diagonal. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you could definitely consider c4 here, but I'm guessing black is happy to take and just kind of isolate these two pawns.
Another move I just saw was bishop b4, because our rook doesn't have
Oh,
much room, and if we play rook e2, we hang the knight. So we
yeah.
have to bring our bishop or yeah.
So you actually have to go bishop here.
Oh wait, but then we either hang the knight or mate.
Yeah, because if we take back with the knight, queen takes h2 is going to be checkmate. So we essentially have to take back with the queen, and then we end up losing this knight. So bishop b4 is definitely a strong move here. So I think somehow white needs to give up the rook for the bishop.
Yeah. I'm gonna completely scrap my c4 idea. So
Yeah, I mean,
maybe
it makes
bishop
sense.
f1 isn't a strong. Well, I mean, computer still likes bishop f1, so I guess just we have to, like you said, just let them not worry about d5.
Yeah, I think maybe the computer wants us to go here. No. This move makes sense to me just to trade queens, but it also puts your knight on a not so great square.
Yeah, that move did look good.
Otherwise, maybe something like queen e2, queen g2, but that looks too slow.
So even though white is up 2 pawns in, I mean, not exactly a great opening for black, e5, f5, he's still getting some counterplay, at least in this specific position. So Robert's probably, at least in this position, maybe he was somewhat optimistic. Even the engine does like this for white, but
Yeah.
um, it black does have some play. So we'll see how this transpired.
The one thing is in this position, specifically, the engine is giving it a plus 1.6. And since white is up 2 pawns, you would think that that's at least plus 2. So black definitely has a little bit of compensation here.
Precisely, yes, good point.
And also, like, it's not easy to find the best moves for white when you're trying to defend. So,
Yeah, me and you
yes.
are throwing out a bunch of bad moves.
Yeah. Especially like something like c4, which I think would be sort of natural. It is immediately falling for like a small little tactic. And then once you do that, it's already better for black. So, yeah, so bishop b3. Robert brings his rook into the game, pretty much his last piece into the battle. I would think he would go for something like rook f6, rook g6, and targeting the g3 pawn. Queen e2, bishop e8. So I guess another piece kind of gets even closer into battle. The bishop will end up coming to h5 potentially, as long as his queen gets moved. So Orion went for knight h4, trying to trade the queens. Once the queens get traded, I think things will become a little bit easier to handle. Queen f7, a4. I think his idea is still like trying to trade pieces. So if pawn takes, he'll go for this bishop trade. And this bishop right now is not doing that much. So if he's able to get rid of it, that might benefit him. The only thing is it does allow this move potentially, which is what Robert ended up playing. And now it's honestly not so clear what's happening here, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm completely confused.
This is just kind of a crazy pawn structure here. This
Yeah.
guy is completely open. And yeah, I mean, this is definitely scary for white. And just for context, Ryan already has 30 minutes. So I believe he's already spent more than an hour. Or
hmm
is it just an hour? More than an hour. And Robert has an hour and 6 minutes. So that
Yeah.
time difference definitely doesn't make it super fun to play this as white. Although he's still doing fine. Yeah, queen f6, rook f1, then b takes a4. The engine's kind of going up and down right now. I'm not sure what the best move is here, but already it's liking black. Maybe just queen takes h4.
Yeah, I don't know why he played b takes a4. It's like I feel like you obviously you want to play on the king side, so I don't know why you'd kind of invite a trade of pieces.
Yeah, I agree. And also, this bishop is much more useful than this bishop in my mind.
Yeah,
So,
I even thought about b4 for black. Like
yeah, like
if we're gonna play on the king side at all, why not play b4? They can't play c3 yet, so
yeah, that's a good point. So I can't even go c4 because of en passant. But otherwise, I would love to play this so I can go c5 and kind
mm,
of unleash my queen side. Yeah, I think probably just queen takes h4 makes a lot of sense. So, but yeah, b takes a4 takes, and already I think 2 moves, or maybe not 2 moves ago, but it feels like fairly recently he had 30 minutes, and now he's down to 12 minutes on this position.
yeah,
So
good point.
yeah, queen takes h4 takes queen g2. So, I mean, the engine's still giving white a good advantage now. I mean, he's still up 1 pawn and an exchange, so that makes sense. But this is also very scary to play. Now he's down to 2 minutes at this point. So the
Wow.
queen comes back. I guess he was worried about some rook h3 stuff.
Yes, I don't see why that's so scary. I mean, I guess it makes sense from the standpoint of you want to play rook f6, rook g6, but if you
Yeah.
play rook f6 too soon, your queen's starting to just get trapped.
Yeah, I think here black already has to bail out with queen g4.
Yeah,
And I think white would be very happy just to take, move this rook here, or here maybe, and then just kind of take this pawn, and then game should be winning.
yeah, you're up so much material that Robert's only hope is to keep queens on, and if he somehow trades them, he's gonna need to trade them for the material back or some crazy checkmate.
Yeah. I mean, that tends to happen with these crazy attacks. You kind of have to back out sometimes before pushing forward. So you back out with your queen just so you can keep the queen safe. And then c4, threatening c5. I'm a little bit surprised he didn't just go for this and kind of ignoring the threat. Just the idea of going rook g6 immediately. And even if you lose the bishop and rook for the queen,
Yeah, good
maybe you would
point.
like that.
I wonder, maybe you can check how quickly he played rook, excuse me, bishop b4. Maybe he just, okay, it looks like he played instantly. Maybe if he would have spent a little time, he would have just found rook f6.
Yeah. I mean, I think bishop e4 is okay. It's just maybe after bishop e4, c5 might come by soon, and then your bishop's kind of out of it.
Yeah, precisely.
And I actually like what Ryan did better, because if c5, black might go for a5 and kind of cement that bishop on b4. But after rook a6 first, after knight d6, now he went for c5, and now this bishop is honestly not having a great time there, since there's no pawn to defend him.
Yeah, this is getting better and better for Ryan. I'm not seeing the attack anymore.
Yep. So knight c4, queen e2. Rook a6 also stops like rook f6. So
What does surprise me a little bit is that he didn't go, just on a first glance, that he didn't go knight e4, that he went knight c4 instead. Because, like, I feel like that's the one thing Black has in this position, that if you just plant your knight there like he had it, like, that's just a killer knight. Like, in a way, it's not doing much, but I don't really see how it's better on c4.
yeah, I agree with you. Maybe he was trying to, maybe he decided the G file wasn't working and he needed to use the E file to bring his
Maybe.
rook and queen in.
Yeah.
But also, like, both of these guys are not doing great on that
Yeah, it's like
start.
now your knight can't come back. If you go to e4, you can always come back to f6 at least, but
Yeah. So a lot of moves are coming in because Ryan's in time trouble here.
Well, some progress.
Yeah, winning that pawn is definitely a little bit helpful because now there's no easy majority there.
Hmm.
Queen g2, trying to trade queens and also attacking this. Knight takes.
What?
Oh,
Oh no.
also the engine is giving this. Oh, I see why. So my first thought is like rook takes is the best move, but then
Same.
queen takes here and black's actually pretty much winning.
Wait, wait, I need to calculate this. So, and for our viewers, I'm guessing queen f2
Yeah,
is the obvious move. Bishop takes. Yeah, I mean,
the immediate threat is queen d1 check. Just taking advantage of this insane pin.
ouch. Hmm.
So it's actually a little bit tricky here because I mean, if rook takes doesn't work and you have 30 seconds, your next thought is okay. I blundered. I need to go queen takes d5.
That must have been his thought process. Yeah.
But I think what he has is rook takes, forcing king h8. And my guess is that this wins.
Oh, nice. Queen g6.
Yep, queen g6, king h8. Trying to decide between these two squares. Maybe this square. And the reason I'm going there instead of this is because I want to control that f7 square. So that way, once your king comes out, I was going to give a rook check here. And then worst case, I have rook d6. But
I don't know
considering
what's
that,
happening in that position.
yeah, that's true. I mean, queen for a rook in two pieces isn't like automatically winning. But this position, the engine's giving plus 44, which must mean something really bad is about to happen. But I honestly don't see it yet. Oh, it is rook d6. But we're not going to take the queen.
I was looking at. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. Hmm.
I think it's like this. Or maybe like this. Yeah. Queen h4, and then if the king comes back, you give a check here. And then you come up to d7 with checkmate.
Oh, and if they go back, we just the classic zigzag, queen and rook. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. That's very tough to see though for Ryan in 30
Yeah.
seconds.
I
You
don't blame
can't.
him at all. Like, I mean, I think if you're able to see rook takes g7 here, and if you're able to see rook takes h7, I think you see that like queen g6 is happening immediately.
True. If you, yeah, you might go for it even if you don't see the end, just because all of a sudden you became scared that, oh no, I just blundered, and it just looks. I mean, you have your queen and your rook cornering the king, so it looks good. So, if he saw it, he might have gone for it anyways.
Yeah, and you at least have a draw here, like worst case. So you
Yeah.
can repeat one or two times and then figure it out from there after you get some time back on your clock. Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one, especially because I think he's been controlling this game, and at this point, this is probably the best position he's had just because of that one tactic.
Yeah, that's tough.
So
He put himself in a position where like his best move was
tough to
this rook
find. Yeah.
stack. Yeah, with 30 seconds.
Yeah. So he kind of bailed out going for this. And I mean, I think like practically there's definitely drawing chances here, but these minor pieces are pretty strong, especially like this bishop that we said was kind of lost. Now it has ways to get back and kind of go after all of these pawns. And then this
Hmm.
knight is just unmovable on d5. So I think this is going to be kind of difficult for him to hold.
That's a good tactic. He couldn't have taken the pawn on c7 because there was a fork on e2.
Oh, yep. Takes c7, knight e2 check. So rook b3 was played, and then knight comes right back here to defend everything. You have a 3-on-1 majority here, but it's like you can't really activate it. And meanwhile, black has this 3-on-1 that's probably going to yield to two pass pawns.
Now I have a question for you, Andrew. Do you think Okay, so we played that. Just
Okay.
me looking at this in a couple seconds. I wonder if you have to go for something crazy now, like rook c7, and sack the rook for a bishop and a pawn. And because two reasons. Because then you have three connected passers, and I'm worried if I don't do something quick, I'm just gonna lose. Because like you said, that knight on d5 is good. Um, I think we might just eventually get bullied by black. So I feel like we kind of have to do something quick. So I wonder if I'm sure it's still lost, but maybe it's our best practical try. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, if you think you're lost here, maybe you try something. So either like rook takes c7 or same idea, but rook takes b4.
Yeah.
And I think objectively, I like this a little bit more just because I want my rook to be very active in ascending
Hmm.
to kind of help these pawns. But I think unfortunately, just rook d8 should be pretty simple, and it's going to be tough to like use these three connected passers.
Hmm.
So it's definitely a good try for him. But rook b7 makes some sense. Maybe here I would consider this just to trade rooks,
Yes.
and then maybe like I don't
But
think
then,
you should take, but like let's say you do. Maybe
actually,
I
in that
go.
position, I think he had bishop e3 check instead of taking on b8.
Oh yeah. So yeah, bishop e3 and just more pawns are getting picked up. So yeah, this is definitely very tough to play for him. And also just like having the position you had earlier and now having to deal with this with 30 seconds left, it's not the easiest mentally to handle. So he's trying to create a pass pawn. This is the current position now, so probably not too many chances, but I think his one idea is make sure black is distracted by this pass pawn. And well, I was going to say, if you can try to pick up some of these guys. So, um, okay, my laptop is about to die.
No, no.
Let me get this charged.
Well, it looks like, yeah, I mean, he's fighting, but this is going to be a very, very tough hold for Ryan, especially with 30 seconds. I would maybe argue Robert's played a little bit too fast, but mostly good time management from Robert this game. And Ryan, he's known to use his time, and I think it's gonna come back to hurt him a bit this game. So yeah, I don't think he'll be able to hold this. Just the combination of low on time and notably looks like we have a few more moves in here once Andrew gets his board back. But they traded rooks, and now white has a rook and two pawns for a knight and bishop for black and three pawns. So if we count up the material, white has 7 points worth and black has 9 points worth. So Ryan's only down two, but black has three connected passers. And there might even be some scenarios where um, Robert will sack his bishop for Ryan's advanced b pawn, and he'll just use his three connected passers to just storm white because white doesn't have enough forces to stop those three pawns most likely. That might not. But it looks like here, like I was saying, I don't think Ryan will be able to hold this. Like I said, the two factors, Ryan, he's under a minute, and black just has to be connected passers. And maybe black will be able to sack his bishop for the b pawn potentially.
Yep, I think I agree with that. Looks like the rooks have gotten traded, and now there is some chances where black might have to give up a piece, probably the bishop for this pawn. And if that ends up happening, maybe there's some chances, but these three pass pawns are going to be difficult to deal with.
Now, come to think of it, though, once I look at it more, maybe black can go knight b6, and then if rook b3, knight, yeah, exactly, knight d7. So maybe black can just have an even better hold.
Yep, I think if I saw knight b6, I'd probably consider it. But it looks like the engine actually thinks this is a draw already. So
Oh, because they can play rook h3 and then
Rook
at least pick up our
h3.
h pawn. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's not super obvious.
Yep. And it's definitely tricky enough where
Wow.
I'm not sure, maybe bishop here was the move.
Ooh, just blockading. Yeah, that's a good just general principle in endgames.
Yeah. And now
Blockade.
with rook here, you can go for the same idea.
Like why sack when you can blockade? The
Yeah. So this might be the winning path, I guess. Just blockade everything and then
yeah,
use
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
pawns.
Just hold on to everything. Be patient. Yeah.
Okay, so I think a lot will end up happening here in the next few minutes. Shall we take a look at a different game?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So we'll go to the top board. I think both of these players are on two out of two. So
Yes.
Miles and Ethan Hunt. So
And I believe if I'll check the standings quick, but I believe they're the only two players on 2 out of 2. So
oh yeah, I think
yep, they
so.
are. So this is a real matchup of the leaders. So important game for the June Thursday nighter.
Yep. So I assume you've played both of these players.
Yes, yep.
I think I mean I've played Miles a lot over the last year, and I've played Ethan as well. So Miles likes to go for this knight f3 b3 stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually never seen him go d4, but I don't really play King's Indian, so
Yeah, he will play d4 at least eventually. Yeah.
yeah, d4, and then you kind of get this Queen's Gambit with opposite fianchettoed bishops.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely interesting.
I'm pretty sure I've had this exact position against him.
Yeah,
So I usually don't play. Maybe I've played c6 before. I've played him so many times. I'm not gonna remember.
yeah, I kind of like what Ethan does. He goes bishop g4, and essentially his idea is like if he were to go e6 at some point, the bishop's out of the chain, and he's gonna try to like hold the light squares and then use his dark square bishop in some sense.
Yeah, this looks like a solid setup. And one of White's, I mean, sorry, excuse me, Black's problems in some of these. It's not quite a. It's a weird Queen's pawn opening because you played knight f3, King's Indian, whatever. Often they're problem developing their c8 bishop, but in this case, you got it to g4. Sometimes it comes to b7, like in the Tartakover, which is what
Yeah.
I play. But this is also very good for Black.
Yep. So knight d2, a6. Um, I usually don't go a6 in these systems, but I think the idea is just to go b5, which makes a lot of sense. Um, yeah. So castles, knight d7, h3. So yeah, the bishop ends up getting traded, and then you put a knight on e4. Some potential ideas maybe f5, right? And playing on the king side.
Mm-hmm.
So Miles goes for b4 immediately, probably trying to go for b5 immediately. So Ethan stops him, which leads to one trade. So you kind of get like, I don't know if this is exactly like an exchange swap with the bishop here, but similar positions maybe.
a4 looks appealing. Okay, yeah, he goes a4.
Yeah, a4 is definitely strong. And after knight d6, I mean, the knight's going to come into c4.
Mm-hmm. Great move.
Yeah, it's actually kind of reminds me of Sam Rugg's game against New Bear in their match. I think there's like some similar ideas. But Miles took, and then when knight e5, I'm not sure exactly how he would have dealt with this.
Hmm.
Oh, I might be blundering tactically. I think maybe there's something with this. No. Maybe it's like rook takes rook first. And if
And
like knight takes bishop, we'll
yeah,
take
you have to play
this.
knight takes bishop. Yeah.
And
Well, I
then
guess
queen
you don't
takes.
have to take, but if you don't take, you probably win a pawn. For as if you're white.
Yeah, I think white's somehow winning a pawn, something like this. Queen b3, attacking this knight, but then also attacking the rook. So maybe there's a better move here too. But I think, yeah, it's probably a little bit tough for black. I was thinking, like, if you ignore the tactics, how do you kind of deal with this knight? Because it's gonna be a little bit annoying. You don't really want to take, since that
No.
might put a pass pawn there.
Hmm.
So I think, yeah, Ethan decides to prepare it a little bit with knight b6, bishop f3. So you kind of see like this bishop feels a little bit misplaced. Like he's first attacking this pawn, but that's defended. So now he's
Yeah.
going here. So not super easy to play this as white.
I wonder, and tell me what you think about this. I wonder if instead of, well, maybe it didn't work tactically, but at some point, you don't have to go back, but at some point, trying to take the knight on e5 with the bishop, because your dark squared bishop isn't so great. And I'm thinking, okay, well, black's don't obviously get that great knight on c4, but white can get a great knight on c5. So maybe black wants to take on e5 before with his
Yeah,
bishop.
I think that makes sense. Like even here, maybe.
Yeah, maybe just even here.
And like this knight comes in here, maybe this knight comes in here. The only thing I would say is white does have the two bishops versus two knights. So if he's able to open up the position, Miles might get some
True.
counterplay. So yeah, knight c4, e4 makes sense to me, but also I think it might run into some bishop takes e5 stuff. Takes, and maybe d4.
And then you have
Or
trouble with the pawn on e5. Yeah.
yeah, something like this. And then yeah, the e5 pawn becomes a little bit weak, and then this bishop also is not doing so good. Yeah, Ethan played queen d6, d3. And I think it's just kind of like he's a little bit better here, and it's a little bit tough for Miles to play, but it's definitely far from losing.
He's probably losing that pawn though now.
Yeah, so rook d1. I'm guessing there's some counterplay on the d5 pawn, but if Ethan can hold on to the pawn, maybe he's doing okay.
Yeah, maybe you have
Maybe
to go
even,
bishop c3.
or knight c3 even.
Knight c3. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I think the middle game's definitely gone wrong for Miles.
Yeah, I've liked Ethan a bit better for a while now.
Yeah. So I guess they both have 19 minutes, so I think this game will probably heat up a little bit soon. I know Connor versus Jordan have been in an endgame for a while. Oh.
Well, we'll
So,
quickly go to the start, but
yeah.
that interesting. Well, it'll be cool to see how we got there.
Yeah. Two bishops versus a knight. Okay. So Jordan, he's been playing his trusty Yobava with white. And I've seen a lot of people play this c5 line against him. I don't know how you play against him usually, but
I do not play c5. When he plays this against me, I'll play like knight a6 or c3 maybe. Sorry, c6. But yeah, I've never played c5 against him.
yeah, I mean, I've seen people do this and it makes sense. I mean, pretty much all the time he goes e4 and then they get this traded position. Looks like there's a Hans versus Aronian game in the database. Like sometimes the queens end up getting traded, but here he ends up going for this. Check, queen takes, and then just pretty equal position, honestly. Pretty boring in my eyes.
Kind of,
But
yeah.
like Jordan always finds a way to make things a little bit interesting.
I mean, I could potentially see an opposite side castling, maybe. I mean, if white decides to, yeah, castle queen side, it's probably just better for black, but
Yeah, I think so, especially because his bishop is going to come here and
yeah.
this rook has an open file. So
But it's Jordan, so maybe.
yeah, so Jordan instead went for a queen trade. It looks like we're still in theory. So there's a Hans versus Aram Hakobian game. Aram Hakobian is a grandmaster who plays for Webster.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I guess this is probably just some theory, and you get this kind of simple ending with just one major imbalance, which is like this 3-on-2, and then this 4-on-3 on the king's side.
This is
So
definitely a heavy hitter matchup. I believe going into this round, these two are the highest rated players posted
yeah, I
live.
think
And yeah,
Jordan is like 2270 and Connor is 2150-ish, maybe.
yes, that sounds right.
So yeah, I mean, definitely a tough matchup here. And going towards what I would think is um, probably a drawn ending. Especially, I mean, they've gone to this position, both had around 90 minutes. So
Yeah, good point. It looks like all of a sudden we've gotten a couple top games back in our database.
yeah,
But hey, I just remembered the crazy ending we had, so I'm curious to find out how that happened.
yeah. So I know there was a sacrifice somewhere around here that Jordan engineered, I guess. So it was right here. He went for knight c4, e5, and bishop takes b6. Here, actually, the engine says that white is winning. I don't know exactly why. I don't know. Maybe it was some rook d1 idea, or maybe it was even just knight takes b6. It might have been this sacrifice. And okay, maybe here, rook d1. Just threatening rook takes d5.
If they move the bishop, do we just
Oh,
promote
I think takes
c4?
a7,
Oh yeah,
forcing
that's simple.
this.
Yeah, that's simple. Yeah,
Then you have not that. Bishop here. It's a nice little tactic to know.
collection. Very nice.
Yeah, forcing takes and then you will queen. So
So Jordan probably, I mean, it's kind of understandable, but I wonder how long he spent on that.
maybe about a minute.
Okay. Um, I mean, bishop b6 is a little more intuitive just because once the knight takes back, you're controlling the promotion square with the knight. But yeah, if he would have thought longer, he probably could have found the line we were just explaining.
Yeah, I think he definitely would have seen this as a better alternative. And even without like the tactics, because I don't think black is forced to go into that. But just having two bishops supporting three passed pawns, and one of those pawns is all the way here on a6, it makes it
Hmm.
very difficult to handle.
Yeah.
So yeah, bishop takes b6, and he ends up getting to push that pawn, which Connor immediately gets rid of. So now Jordan is up a pawn, but I think that was pretty temporarily after rook d2. Bishop
Hmm.
f1 takes here. And yeah, here I thought this endgame was pretty interesting. I honestly liked black a little bit more, just because this pawn is kind of not doing much. And once you get something rolling here, I think these two bishops start to become a little bit scary.
I agree. Yeah, the bishop pair is nice here.
So let's see what ends up happening. He hides the bishops in the corner. Here, maybe knight e8 would be interesting if you want to get rid of a bishop, but you also have to watch out for some like rook b1, bishop c4 things.
Hmm. I wonder if he could have gone bishop e5 back there and tried to pin the knight to the rook.
So
Not that he would have won material, but just I wonder if it would have made any sense.
I think it makes some sense. Just tying you up here so that you can come and win a pawn. But I think if Jordan wants, he could probably do something like this. Oh, that might run to like bishop d5. Oh, knight f7 is probably the move.
Oh, Okay, yeah. And then you get rid of one of the bishops. You
Yeah, you
lose
end
your
up with,
pawn, but you'd probably still draw. It's opposite card with bishops, so not
yeah, I
not
think.
not to just write off, not to say it's always a draw, but it probably is.
I mean, the one thing is with rooks on the board, it's a little bit more complicated, but it's
Yeah,
definitely holdable. The one of the main worries here is probably that like bishop d4 is a threat,
true.
and this pawn is under attack. So maybe it's not so simple. Maybe there's something better here, like rook here or rook here. No, that's terrible. Takes. My idea was just this, but then it's rook b1. Oh, maybe this is a good move.
Hmm. But do we have rook b1? Oh, then they never mind.
Yeah.
I was looking at them taking the heavy piece, but no.
Yeah, I think you probably either have to take or maybe takes here. But then you're not winning this pawn. So like takes, rook c2, for example, then rook c8. I don't know if you want to go c4, just because bishop d4. But you might just sacrifice it, and either the bishop has to take and you pin this bishop to the rook,
It
or
does look
you
a
end
bit
up
scary for white.
trading. Yeah, it definitely is. Black is definitely pushing, but I think with best play, white should be okay. But yeah, we ended up getting this, and then Connor starts pushing his pawns. H4 is a common move, right? So if pawn takes, you win a pawn, but your structure's messed up, and then Black will start using his good pawn structure to create a pass pawn. And I guess I'm a little bit surprised by E3, honestly. I think maybe F4 is a little bit more intuitive.
Yeah, I agree.
But I guess maybe he's trying to open this up and then use his bishops against this king. So
Another
for
move I.
example, like here, there's takes.
Oh, correct.
Yeah. Interesting. So we still have equal material. Oh, okay. So black plays king g7 here. And I had a little bit of a moment where I was like kind of shocked. But he has this little trick here where if you take the
Ah,
bishop,
nice.
yeah, f4 check and then picks up the rook.
But why can't you throw in a check first? Oh, the bishop guards the checking
Yeah.
square. Okay. Oh boy. Tricks, tricks, tricks.
And I'm guessing that's either Connor had some trick or Jordan tried something.
That's probably how we ended up with the position we saw.
Oh, there's
Another
one
trick.
trick. Picks up the rook. And I'm guessing at some point Jordan is like, okay, I need a sack here. Nope. And then it happens immediately.
Right away.
Okay. So first decision here, if Connor was to take this knight, essentially the drawing method is you go bishop e4, and then you just hide your king on that corner, and then your bishop just stays on that long diagonal.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way for black to make progress.
Good
So
technique, yes.
yeah, the only way to really do anything is to take. And looks like what the table base says is loss is prevented by 50 move rule. So I think that means a win, but it just takes forever. So
That is that 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 just increased my love for chess. The fact that this is winning for black, but it's gonna take you over 50 moves, that is insane. Loss prevented by 50 move rule. We are not kidding you, viewers. That's what it literally says. Loss prevented by 50 move rule. I mean, wow, just tragic.
yeah,
Dumb 50 move rule. No, it's a good rule, but in this case, Connor wished it didn't exist.
yeah, and I mean here there's two squares for the knight, only two squares, but one of them runs into a little trick. And after this, Connor would end up winning this game. So Jordan correctly played the knight there. And I'm honestly, let's see what Connor does with this. Because I think it's not easy to play this from both sides, like the perfect table-based moves. So yeah, we have this live position. Um,
Oh, we reached the live. Okay.
yeah,
Mm,
I don't exactly know what the winning plan is. One idea is to maybe like get this king too far out where you can trap the knight.
yeah, that's what I was looking at. We need to somehow maybe corner the knight, separate the knight from the king maybe, and then corner the knight, control it with the bishop, the two bishops and the king, and just have the knight have no squares.
Yeah, so for example, let's say I were to do, okay, that would allow knight f3 check. But let's say something like this were to happen. I think this knight is already running out of moves. It's like these
Yeah,
guys are gone. If here, this will happen, and now the knight's actually just trapped. So you have to go here. And I think this also traps it.
yeah, it's a goner.
So that might be one of the ideas, but in this position, Jordan understands that, so he's going to keep his king pretty close. So yeah, we'll see if progress can be made here. Let's just check what move they started on. So move 48 was the last capture. So assuming we stay with two bishops and two knights, we still have almost 40 more moves here. What do you think the result's going to be?
I think I'm gonna add a little subscript to this. I think if Jordan uses his time properly, he will draw this. If he like for some reason thinks, oh, I don't know what his mindset is, but I'm if he's overconfident, thinks, oh, this is an easy draw, he plays too quickly, I think Connor has decent chances. But if he just spends even just a little bit of time on each move, like a couple minutes a move, obviously it'll vary, but I think it'll be a draw. Because Jordan does have to be careful here. Like we said earlier, um, this is winning for Black if the 15 move rule didn't exist. So he still needs to be Jordan still needs to be a bit careful. But if he uses his time, he'll be fine. He just can't blunder something quickly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he has 40 minutes. He has 40 moves to hold this, assuming Connor plays on for 40 moves. So he'll get another 20 minutes from that. That's like an hour for 40 moves. So if you just spend at least a minute a move, you have enough time to get to the end, and you can hopefully avoid any simple blunders. And yeah, you'll notice some tricks also from Black's side, and you can stop those as well. So
I definitely would be sweating a bit if I were Jordan. I would be a bit nervous, just a bit, because this is it's not trivial.
yeah, if I was white in this position, I'd be also a bit nervous. I don't think there's many chess players who've studied two bishops versus knight to
No,
really know what the correct drawing method is or how to make it as difficult as possible. Just kind of chess at this point. I don't know.
yeah, like for example, like if he goes 94 here, he loses.
Yeah.
So have to be
So I
careful.
think
But
that one's
we
a pretty
probably
simple one, but
yeah, that's a simple one. But
the question is there some other like, for example, if like knight f1 is lost immediately or something, right? Then that's where things get tricky. Yeah, like this might be bad already because like king d3. So there are definitely tricks here. Probably king e2 makes some sense. Or knight f1. We'll see what happens here. Shall we move on to the last game in the premiere that we haven't checked?
yeah, we should.
So we got, I think both of these players are NMs.
Yes.
Um,
Yep.
so Strong matchup on board 3.
I don't know what Nate's peak rating was. I forget.
Yeah, I don't think it's too easy to find. I know he's obviously been about 2200, but I think maybe
He has a floor of 2100, so you can get that two ways, right? Either getting 2300, obviously the obvious way, or like playing a certain number of games over 2100, probably.
so he definitely has the Life Master title, like playing 300 games above 2200. I think he might have asked to get it lower to 2100 since I know USCF allows you to do that.
Interesting. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, he's definitely still a strong player.
Oh yeah.
So he also kind of experiments with any opening. I think he has a lot of experience in everything. So we kind of get a similar position to what we saw in the Miles versus Ethan game.
Yeah, similar.
I think maybe the only difference is the pawn is on d5.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, other than that, it's very similar. And then yeah, I think I saw this position earlier, and I like this g4 move a lot. The idea is, well, you might end up castling there, but for now, you don't know where you're castling. You don't know where your king is going to be. But the center is pretty safe for now, even if like e5 happens, which it did happen. Like even if takes, your king is not doing too bad, so it makes sense. G5, 98.
Yeah, G5 is you're running when you if you play G5, you're kind of saying that I'm probably not going to castle kingside, and if you are, you're taking serious risks because the further you push those pawns on the king side, the easier it is for black to bust open the king side with moves like h6 or f6. So when when Nate played G5, just for the viewers, you're most likely going to castle queen side. King side's still possible, but it's only further weakening your king.
Yeah, so I would expect something like this. But it looks, I'm just looking at the notation here, it looks like Nate actually played king f1 at some point. So
Okay, I didn't even
we'll,
consider that.
we'll see what happens. I think the f1 square is also a relatively safe square. Okay, so c5 kind of breaking at this diagonal.
Interesting. Computer is fine with white's position. I definitely prefer black though. Weird.
I think I like white just because of this bishop.
And I guess he can play h4, h5. So maybe maybe it is fine for.
Yeah. Okay, so he was forced to move his king basically. I guess you could go bishop e2, but
then you really can't castle, or at least for a little bit. Okay,
So
king f1 now makes sense.
I guess some of the idea is like you're not going to open this f file up unless you go f6. But if you go f6, you might actually be like opening yourself up to some annoying bishop checks.
I don't know. I feel like black, but we'll see.
Yeah. h4, knight e6. Knight c3. So far, this feels right from Nate's perspective. Like immediately, if he could get knight e4, knight f6, he'd be very happy.
Yeah, I feel like I definitely would have played f6 sooner if I'm black, because white does have that h4, h5 idea. So they're gonna go after us. I mean, that's pretty much their only plan. So I don't know why we're not playing. I mean, okay, maybe he's worried about h5, and then the g6 square is weaker because we just moved our f pawn. So that must be his concern.
Yeah, or even like this might be very annoying, just going after this knight.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, like you said, that light square bishop's annoying. Well, because it's funny, because right when we had to trade that early in the opening after they played h3, I was a little sad to lose our light square bishop, but we didn't really have an option. So
yeah, that's kind of the downfall of that, but I think that's where you need to plug those pawns on those light squares, so like c6, d5 instead of d6, c5. But some of it is just preference and what type of positions you like. Yeah, this is definitely preferable for white. h5 just crashing through. He's saying, okay, you can have this pawn, but if you take that pawn, I'm just going to have this open g file, and I'll eventually use it for whatever. bishop d5 makes sense positionally. The engine doesn't like it, but like from a human's perspective, I think it's a perfectly fine move. Knight f4, takes. So here, a lot of people might consider h6, just to throw in checkmate. I don't know. Do you like h6, or do you think there's better?
If I pretty much only like it if we're going to checkmate them. If we're not going to checkmate them, then it's just bad.
Yeah,
So like if h6, I'm just trying to somehow block the diagonal for their queen. I'm looking at, yeah, rook e5, knight f3. How do we... That looks good for white, unless
it
I'm missing
does.
something.
I mean, this should be good for white, but the question is, am I going rook e5, knight f3, and maybe sacking in exchange?
Oh, but they can play knight e6 here, right?
Knight e6 is the other option, but I was thinking then, oh, right. Yeah, I was thinking bishop takes, and if knight takes, then I have maybe knight e4, and I'm happy.
Oh, knight e4, okay. Okay, then I do like h6.
Well, but he has pawn takes. And then,
Oh, good point. Hot
yeah,
takes.
and now
Not
you
as,
don't have knight e4.
yeah. Okay, changed my mind again. I don't like h6.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, I think you basically said it perfectly. It's like if this concretely like just wins, then yeah, you go for it. But otherwise, h takes g6 is definitely the right move. So yeah, I mean, ideally black would take with the f pawn, but with that pin, it's not possible. And h takes obviously gets mated, so um, kind of have to go knight takes. But this is definitely not great for
Oh
black.
no. He even delays taking on h7.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe he was thinking like, oh, if I can get queen h6 here, then I'd be mating you. So
Hmm.
now the question is, does he take, or does he try to find something else like that? Yeah, this is going to be very annoying for him to deal with.
He's playing with his food.
Yeah. Knight takes g5, one of the moves you would consider as black. It unfortunately runs into queen h6, picking up this knight and probably more material as well. So I think Nate will probably end up winning this. He does have 5 minutes, but with 30-second increment, I think he'll be able to convert.
Yeah. 5 minutes should be enough. The position is so crushing.
Yep. Okay, so we have a few more games we can look at. We have some results. Do you want to quickly take a look at
Yeah,
those?
let's go through those results and then catch the other games that are still ongoing.
So in the open, we have Thad versus Judson. Um, can maybe see what happens. I think both players are in the 1700-1800 range.
Yeah, Thad's definitely an improving player. I think he's in the
Yeah.
1700s currently, or maybe high 1600s, but he's improved for sure.
I think when I was growing up, he was maybe in the 1400 range, and then recently he's been able to push that up. So
Yeah. And I don't think I've ever played Judson. He's a player I've heard his name, of course, but I don't think have you played him?
no, but I think I've seen that he plays Thursday nighters a bit. So
Okay, because my picture of Judson is with like a cowboy hat and a mustache.
yeah, I
That
think mine
that's my
too.
picture of him. So I never played him though, so I'll have to play Thursday night or one time just to meet everyone.
Yeah. So they end up getting this like Slav Catalan setup. Um, can't remember if people usually take, but I think sometimes against the Slav setup, they're worried that black will go d takes and b5
Hmm.
and then hold on to the pawn. So takes, queen here. Just for reference, we have a Korchnoi versus Karpov game from 1974 in this position as the top game.
Hmm.
So common line. Looks like most people in this position have been playing d3, but d4 also makes sense. It's just a little bit different of a structure. Knight d7, bishop f4. Somehow black's position's been a little bit awkward here somehow. I think maybe here the knight might have belonged on c6.
Yeah,
Or
or
maybe
even
like this.
yeah, like that, or even maybe knight a6. The knight's a little sad there, but for some reason I'm a little worried about forks on c7. But we're gonna castle quickly, so maybe we don't have to worry.
Yeah, I think maybe this is the idea. And then if bishop f4, you go bishop e7. And if knight b5, you're going to castle right in time. And all is good.
Yeah.
But after knight d7, things start to look a little bit scary. So, like, for example, if you want bishop e7 here, I think knight b5, or Benjamin doesn't like that.
Wonder why though.
I think it's the same idea. You castle and then your queen looks
Oh,
awkward. Oh,
yeah.
castle's also not good. Well, I was thinking like rook c1 would happen. Maybe it's something to do with like queen c2, bishop c2. Yeah, this is a little bit clever.
Bishop checks, yeah.
So I think what the best move is rook c1, immediately threatening knight takes d5 with this
Yes.
attack. And then it kind of stops you from castling. So like if you try to deal with it, maybe now knight b5 is a little bit annoying. So I think black kind of decided that he needs to try something, so he went for knight h5, went after this bishop. Yeah, definitely uncomfortable to play.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think the best move is probably just to castle. And you end up losing the exchange after knight c7, knight takes a8. But at least you're all developed and you live to see another day. But after bishop d8, there's a really nice tactic here. That is rook c8.
Okay.
And the queen is trapped, can't go anywhere, so you have to take, and then knight d6 with a nice little fork. And then to like add more insult to your injurious, like I was gonna say like this pawn falls too, but knight e5 is also very strong. And then bishop b4, and your king is kind of dancing in the center. Queen a4, making use of that pin, pretty
Yeah,
much
I probably don't know.
forcing.
Fork on g4 now.
Yeah, g4 is a big threat, so knight f6, and I think here you can actually go g4 anyways, right?
And then g5, yeah.
Oh, maybe g4 bishop takes.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so
We're getting
bishop c.
greedy.
Yeah, no, yeah, we definitely are trying to look for like a knockout punch, but he sees maybe there's like bishop c2 coming, so he goes bishop c3. He says, "Okay, I will let you castle." Oh wait, you can't castle. You moved that king.
Yep.
Okay, then this is perfectly fine. Um, oh, okay, so that's the knockout punch. There's like this check, and then bishop here.
Then you win the piece, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so really nice game by Judson. Just kind of using the early positional advantage and then immediately finding the killer tactic to pretty much win in around 15 moves.
Yeah, that was tough for
Yeah. Um, let's take a look at this Ryan game because I think there's a little bit of a surprising result here between Ryan and Robert. Yeah, b7, king g6. So yeah, rook a3, h5, rook a8. So Ryan is able to win this bishop, essentially. But this is not losing yet because these pawns, specifically like that h4 pawn, should be very dangerous. f4. Honestly, I think if I had this, I'd be a little bit scared to play as white. It's d5, king g4, d6. Okay. So here, I think what black needs to do is just go after this pawn. And once you win the pawn, you should be able to hold a draw. So yeah, after king g4, d6. Hello.
I'm back.
Cool. So
You
yeah,
gotta get a new camera. I'm telling you. I've had more problems with it today than any other day before.
yeah, I run into some camera issues sometimes on this laptop. So yeah, we're just looking at the Ryan game. So essentially here after king g4, the pawn got too far.
Oh
And
wow,
then yeah, this
massive turnaround.
yep. Surprised by rook f8, but I'm sure he had it all calculated that here he has this rook sack.
I was expecting rook h8.
Yeah, I was expecting rook h8 too, but I'm assuming he actually. Yeah, I guess he made the move with 29 seconds, but
I guess if rook h8, there is f3. And either way, you're sacking the rook, I think.
yeah. Yeah, so rook h8. And then after this, this isn't too easy of an endgame. I guess now with the king cut off, it should be a little bit easier, but still, you have to find
Yeah.
some precise moves. Oh, little stalemate trick. Can't take the knight. But you can give this check, which allows you to take the knight for free. So, yeah, I mean, crazy game, honestly. I think Ryan was doing great, and then he had that big blunder that we saw earlier where he had this rook sack that wasn't easy to see with like 2 minutes left. And then Robert was in control for a bit. So, yeah, this is a really nice game to watch.
It was, yeah. Game of roller coasters.
Yeah. Then we have one other result between Joel Kennedy and Mitch Ross. I think this is accurate. I know some of the boards aren't for the Open. Do you know either of these two players?
I've heard of Mitch Ross. I couldn't put a face to him. And Joel Kennedy, I actually never heard of him. I don't know if he's a new player or what.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure who they are, but I think Mitch, is he around 1600 maybe?
That sounds about right, but I'm clueless on that as well.
So yeah, we have a cattle in. I think e3 is a little bit interesting in the opening, but I mean I understand you want to defend the pawn. So yeah, 97 takes c5. So the knights kind of get moving a little bit. White has a good position for now because of that space in the center. The black's able to get developed. Yeah, bishop g5 is a nice move, trading this bishop for this. This bishop's kind of nice here, honestly. And the fianchetto bishop's kind of blocked, so it makes sense to trade those two guys off.
Huh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have allowed the structure, but it does open that file, so. Yep, some more trades, more double pawns. The knight d5 ends up correcting one of the double pawns, so takes. queen here. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's around even, but somehow I feel like white's position's not too bad. Pieces are active. There's definitely some room for some place, maybe like rook f1 or yeah, I mean, should be pretty even. Yeah, I was looking for a trade like this, but I think the problem is that you end up losing a pawn on d5. So somehow if you're able to prepare that with like e4, and then you could solidify that passed pawn, then you might be able to trade those bishops. Then takes queen c2. And then black's pieces are pretty active. I would maybe consider queen e4 just to try to get both these rooks here. Yeah, after queen d2, queen f3, rook c2. Yeah, I think trading is fine, but honestly, I would still probably keep the queens on since we have a little bit of an attack going. But I think a lot of people look at trading when you're up material as good, so it makes sense. Yeah, rook endings tend to be a little bit drawish, but you know, 2 pawns is a lot to handle, and this rook is really active on the second rank. So definitely not too easy to hold. And yeah, white's rook ends up out of play. More pawns fall. And I think we had a resignation here. So we can take a look at this. Okay, I think. Yeah, it looks like there's some DGT board error on these guys. But then we have board 10 between Drew Johnson and Jacob Picus. Jacob, I think he's around 1500. He's been improving recently. And he tends to play some offbeat lines. So like I think he plays the English with white, and I know he plays these in shadow openings with black. So c5. It looks like a pawn sack at first, but I think the idea is essentially to challenge that center that white has. And usually after the pawn takes, you can probably pick it up with like queen a5 check. So yeah, c3, takes, d5, d5. Hello. So I guess this is like kind of a Grunfeld setup.
But you're looking through Jacob Picus and Drew Johnson. I'm not familiar with Drew Johnson.
We can't really hear you.
I'm not familiar with Drew Johnson. I'm familiar with Jacob Picus though.
Yeah, I am too. So yeah, we got this like Grunfeld kind of setup. And yeah, again, we're seeing kind of this theme of like your bishop gets out of the pawn chain and then you stick all of your pawns on the white squares. Knight f5 is very strong. And here I assume you would probably take black.
I guess we are just winning that pawn, so yes.
It's also like kind of a French-like position, right?
Yes, and I do play the French, which I'm sick and tired of the French, but yes.
I don't know if it's actually a free pawn. I think you end up getting pinned here, and it might be very annoying.
Oh, it was white's move there. Okay, knight c3.
Yeah. So like for example, if takes, I might go bishop here, and then I might follow it up with knight e2.
Good point, yes.
And maybe you have some f6 stuff. Or you probably have some f6 stuff. So maybe bishop g4 is the move.
And I was still looking at g4 for white instead of knight c3 is perfectly fine, but maybe at some point g4 too, just kicking the knight away. Because like you said, maybe they can't take that pawn.
Also rook d1 if you want to defend this guy. So just defend that and then you can go g4. I think that's probably what I would choose here. But knight c3 and f6 was played, kind of challenging the center. I think one key idea first is that you can never really take this, because after the bishop takes, there's just way too much pressure on this pawn. And even if you don't lose it, you're going to be tied up all game. But after f6, you can kind of ignore it. So, and I'm not sure if you really want to take.
Yeah, it's one of those situations in chess. I don't know if there's a name for it, but really neither side wants to take.
Yeah.
It's okay if
So,
black takes, but it's not really doing too much.
yeah. So you might just end up keeping the tension there and seeing what happens down the line. So, yeah, knight a4. Definitely comfortable for white now. Oh, okay. So what's going on here? So he grabbed the pawn, and then after knight takes e6. The idea is if knight takes, I'm guessing bishop d5 is the idea, but maybe first you go rook takes e6.
Yes, yes, yes.
So this would be very annoying for black.
Because I think if you don't play rook e6, I think black's fine.
Yeah, there might be some way to defend this. And still, like, white can continue the pressure, but I think black's dodged a bullet if this were to happen. So, yeah, but instead knight takes f3 was played. Yeah, this is a very strange position too. This structure, and then I actually think black's king's a little bit less safe than white.
Oh, really?
There's some threats here. Yeah, I just think like once queen takes d5 happens, which will happen soon, there's always going to be like some sort of discover that you have to watch out for. And if you hide your king on h1, then now f5 might come, and then your rook might get here.
Yeah.
So yeah, and some similar ideas are happening here. Interesting. I guess like he essentially forced the queens off the board. I wonder if rook takes b2 is a move here.
Hmm.
The idea is if rook takes, then we'll take this rook, and we'll be up a piece.
Trying to cut the material. Yeah, so they have to take on e1. Now, well, black's up one pawn here.
One
They might
pawn.
take b7 though.
Yeah, the question is, can white get to b7 in time?
Probably rook d1 here.
Yeah, but maybe you have this now, and someone is following. I think here you would probably end up going rook d7, and this should be around even.
Yeah.
Maybe this was an option, but I think this works too, because after the trades, you end up picking up b7. Interesting pawn sack. I don't know if it was necessary, but I think the idea is, again, to create some lines of attack, maybe.
That must be.
Oh, rook
Oh.
b8. Oh, just for reference, he has 56 seconds, so.
Okay, good point. Yeah, it was a little weird to give away the pawn and then trade rooks. Now you're just down a pawn.
Yeah. They're actually really low on time, considering it's only move 30, but I think a lot of the middle game complications there probably led to that. But I mean, even this is drawish. Like, it's not super easy to win. I think one key is just if you're defending, you don't want to trade, because I think a knight in game is a little bit hard to defend. But yeah, keeping the pieces on the board. Makes sense. A6. Oh, here you kind of have to take, because otherwise you have to go knight d8. So, honestly, here I think white's making a lot of progress. Probably just putting a pawn there, at least for now. Slowly making the way up the board, and then once the king is tied down, it's like if you have a pawn here and a bishop here, that kind of will cut off the king from taking the pawn. So just to
And it's
make a
really
few
nice for
moves.
white here is that he never has to trade any pawns because the pawns are all just on either the same file or just they can't be touched.
Yep. So I mean, if you get something like this, then you can kind of march here with that pawn, and then you have this passed pawn versus a bishop. So you should be able to win that. I don't know. Do you think there's many drawing chances here? Or do you think white's
I tend to
hard?
think I would be able to win this. Yeah, I think it's too. If
Too much? Yeah.
if the I'm trying to think, even if the a pawns were removed, just a brief like look at it. I mean, the he can't even really sack the bishop for the f pawn. Like let's just say the a pawns were gone, he can't really sack the bishop for the f pawn because the h pawn's same color as the white's bishop. So you'd probably still end up
Yep.
winning h7 too. So, and like you said, you kind of have two ideas here. You're just gonna push the f pawn, and then yeah, bring the king to the king side. Sorry, queen side. So yeah, I think Drew should be able to win this.
Yeah, I agree. I think actually if the a pawns are gone, maybe black has some drawing chances because you can like just keep your king on f7 and maybe just move your bishop around and survive. But I think with the a pawns there, there's just kind of that decoy idea that's going to be tough to stop. So yeah, I think this game will be done pretty soon. We have one more result in the Hoover game,
Hmm.
so I guess we can see how he finished it off. We left off here where, yeah, this was looking really tough. Oh, yeah, that works. So you just take the rook, and if you take the queen, you take the queen. So he tries to move his queen, goes for the trade, and then Thomas tried to keep the queens on the board, maybe going for some threats like here. But with the bishop there, I think everything's pretty well defended. I think this is probably a DGT error.
Yeah, something crazy happened because they say rook h3, h6, rook h6, and I was trying to comprehend the rationale behind this, and my brain could not.
So usually what this means is like he played rook takes h7.
Must have, yeah, because rook h3, you just take the rook. So
And I'm guessing resignation probably followed soon after because rook takes here is a threat. And you can't take this bishop because of your queen.
yeah, that's what
So,
happened. It's a good
yeah.
win for Nate. I mean, that was pretty clinical. He never really lost the thread.
Yeah, this is definitely a really clean game. And also very interesting with like the g4 stuff.
Hmm.
Just kind of from what looks like maybe a relatively simple position, like if you were to castle, it definitely feels very balanced, right? But playing g4 kind of just throws a wrench into the whole game. And then I think there was just one game we hadn't looked at, and it's the Sport 5 matchup between Jeremy and Kevin. I think both are around 1700, maybe.
Hmm.
Maybe Kevin's around 18. Don't think I've played either of them.
I've played I've played Jeremy a couple times and Kevin a couple times, but yeah, I'm not too familiar with either player. But yeah, I think Kevin likes these Kings Indian.
It's an interesting move. Kind of blocks off your bishop, but at the same time, you're just trying to get out the pin.
Yeah.
Yep, so queen d3. The engine's always going to give white a good edge, but I mean, it's King's Indian, so anything can really happen.
Mhm.
Oh, This is an interesting decision. So usually we want to capture towards the center, but I guess the reason that f takes is played is you're just saying I want to have this open f file. Like if I'm able to get knight d5, knight f6, for example, I'll be very happy. So
Yeah.
yep, so e5 takes. Interesting. I think this actually allows knight d5, maybe. But queen d5 is played. Yeah, either knight d5 or like knight b5 look a little bit annoying to deal with.
Hmm.
Knight
Tough for
d5
black.
maybe takes. I don't see
Yeah.
like a knockout blow, but
Yeah, I don't either.
definitely uncomfortable. So this is played instead. And with the end game, I think black's a little bit happier here than like a few moves ago.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Kind of looked like a situation where white was better, maybe even a winning advantage potentially, but it wasn't easy to spot,
Yeah,
which often the case. Then we end up with in a position where black might be able to hold this. So
yeah. But then after c5, I mean, the one thing black has is the bishop pair, and white's pawn structure is not as good. So now up a pawn.
oh oh no. I guess you have to take now, but now black's better.
Yeah, this is interesting. Like you either go takes and you get this position, or you go bishop d4 check and you get this position.
I like the latter better, yeah. What he went for in the game.
Yeah. Okay. Takes, pawn takes. Um, yeah, I'm not sure if rook c8 is the right idea. There's a few options here. It's either like rook d8 and kind of backing up that pawn, or just rook c8, but also maybe just rook b8 to defend this guy. Then rook d1.
It's probably gearing towards a draw.
I think black can actually push if he finds this move. The idea is like once your bishop moves away, then I will go rook d8 and defend the pawn.
Oh,
And then I have an extra pawn, right?
and if bishop e4, then f5. Okay.
f5 pushing you back, yeah.
Okay, maybe, yeah, good point.
But also not easy to see because you see rook b8 and then you see rook d1 and you're like, oh, I'm losing this pawn because I can't defend two pawns with one rook. So yeah, rook c8 takes here. And now you have equal pawns, but it's still not super easy. This is a very tricky move because like if takes, pawn takes, and that pawn's going to promote. And if you do nothing, d2 is going to potentially be annoying. But fortunately, you have bishop e4. And I think here you're going to struggle to do anything with that pawn. Oh,
Yeah, maybe taking on g5 first for white, or moving the bishop to that diagonal. Yeah.
yeah, something like this. But maybe takes, maybe it's better just to let him go here so that you're not getting like checked on this file. I'm not really sure. But definitely this gets a little bit uncomfortable. Here, Kevin was a little bit low on time, so. Oh, and then that pawn gets some counterplay. Interesting, but it's an okay move. But you end up getting a rook ending. I would have actually tried to put a little bit more pressure. I don't know, maybe something like this.
Now the cool thing for white is this is reminding me of a other Thursday nighter game here where I believe it was Eddie Wasserman versus Jordan Tim, where Eddie started just kamikazing his rook. He was
I
sacking his rook
see.
because otherwise there would be a perpetual. Sorry, not
Yeah,
perpetual, but the king is pretty much stalemated. So I'm wondering if he can somehow just perpetually check Black's king.
I think that's the idea. So let's say we go rook here, takes, check. And we would probably go around this way. But then here we would end up coming back. So I think with all those checks, it's just too hard to make progress for black.
Mhm.
But instead, black went for the trades immediately, and I think this will probably end up making it easier to draw. Here, probably rook here just to pick up this pawn is easiest, but same results. Yeah, they end up getting this. Oh,
Oh, I
wow.
guess he was. That is tough. I can see why he traded, but
Yeah, but I think the way you do this is like you move the rook anywhere, takes, and then you just get your king to g7 essentially. And there's two ways you can do this. One is called the passive defense, where you'll essentially just keep your rook on this row, and there's not going to be any way to make any progress. And the reason for that is because these are knight pawns. So like there's not going to be a way for the rook to get to like I6 and give a check.
like
So
yeah, because you always just take the rook. There's no checkmating on that side of the board.
yeah. And then the other way is the Philidor, which is a little bit more difficult with this, I think. But essentially, once the pawns, if all these pawns got pushed too far, then you give checks on behind the king.
Mm,
So
that's very instructive. And it looks like I guess Kevin was low on time,
yeah,
but he must have not felt that. That's something where he must have not known for sure that that was a drawn endgame. Because
yeah,
even with low time, he would have gone for that if he had that endgame memorized. But that is tough. I didn't know. I might struggle to draw that. My endgames are not exactly my strength.
yeah. I mean, I think like just from like what your mind will naturally think, you're like, oh, I'm down two pawns. But since
Yeah.
they are doubled, it's not as big of a deal. So yeah, the rooks got traded. And yeah, h5 check is apparently a mistake.
Oh, there's another turn. Wow.
Yeah, I'm guessing the winning method is here, and then g3. And then you kind of just like outflank with your king and eventually come and win that pawn. So like this here. Now I'll go h5. I'll come back in with my king, and then I'll go and pick up the pawn, and king and two pawns versus king will be a win. But yeah, h5 allows this like opposition idea where the only way I should be able to make progress now is to trade these pawns.
Mhm. Wow.
So I think that's kind of what happened. So eventually the trades happen, and then your king gets there.
I
So
wonder. Just looking at these last few moves, I wonder if this doesn't sound crazy, but I wonder if Jeremy always thought this was a draw, even with this 2-against-1, because he had so much time and he kind of played it quickly. He was completely winning and then he blundered this h5, and I think he spent 3 minutes. Yeah, he spent 3 minutes on that move. So maybe if he for some reason, I don't know, because it was just a little weird how that this game finished off.
yeah, I agree. I think okay. I mean, it's not super easy to see this. One thing to keep in mind is king h5 is a trick because king f5 stalemate,
True.
but you end up getting this, and this should be winning because your king gets to this very nice g7 square. Then
Mhm.
you push. So yeah, I think it's definitely a tricky ending. Um, Pawn endings usually are tricky, and then you've been playing for like what 3-4 hours. So.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, I think you might be right where Jeremy might just kind of have assumed that this is going to be a draw and like thinking, oh, if I get G5 in, it's just going to be a draw. So I have to go h5, and something like that might have happened.
I believe we just
Um,
have one game left, and that's Daryl Bimberg versus
yeah,
Lucas.
it's a DGT error. So we actually
Oh,
have
it's
all
GG
games
there.
done.
Okay.
So
Oh,
yeah, this game did end up being a draw between Jordan and Connor. So
he was able to hold it. Okay, our prediction proved true. Except he finished with 37 minutes, so he didn't use too much this time.
yeah. But I guess with a 30-second increment, you probably can survive with spending 30 seconds to move. Though here it looks a little bit interesting. Yeah, I don't think it's, I'm guessing it's, since I can look at the table base and see if it's like win prevented by 50 move rule, I can like double check. Oh, so this was winning.
Oh, wow. So he did have a chance.
Yeah.
Wow. Very tough, though. Very tough.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, you have to find perfect moves essentially. So
Yeah. Not easy. And like you pointed out earlier, who studies this?
yeah. So yeah, we're
So
back to draw.
it ended up being a draw by the 50 move rule. They made it to move 98.
Yep. Just double checking to like make sure there wasn't something crazy. But yeah. Yeah. So interesting there. Um Probably like I mean I don't know how many people could actually win that from that position that was actually winning. So makes sense.
Ooh, and then we do have the top board for the battle for our first place, Ethan and Ryan.
Yes. So this is I think we agreed that Ethan was looking really good in the middle game.
Yes, those knights were very strong.
Yeah. And then he had his pawn, but it looks like maybe rook d8 was an inaccuracy, because after this knight moves out the way, um, you end up losing a pawn back. And maybe after this, yeah, you got this opposite card bishop ending where you're up a pawn, or where Miles is actually up a pawn. Interesting. But even though Miles is up a pawn, it's like black can blockade everything.
Yeah.
And eventually these trades happened. Here you blockade that b pawn, and it's just not easy to make progress. And then once you can trade rooks, you do it because the opposite card bishop ending is going to be a draw. And now the key here is essentially with this light square bishop not controlling that square, you can just put your king there and you'll never lose as long as you sack your bishop. So
Exactly what
yeah,
he did. Yep.
well, so we definitely had some interesting games, some very topsy-turvy end games. A lot of them ended up in draws, but I think the only other game we hadn't seen the ending to was Drew versus Jacob, where essentially what we said would happen happened. Um, yeah, got this pawn to f5. He prevented anything, any king infiltrations, and then he went for that pawn. And I think here Jacob has to try bishop f6 and just try to trade, but I mean, I think after takes, it's just winning. So
And I don't know, did we see the end of Mitch Ross and Joel Kennedy?
oh yeah, I think we did. Yeah, there's like this rook ending where Mitras just up some
Okay.
pawns.
Yeah, just easy.
So yeah, I think that's all the games.
Yeah, that is. Well, that was very, very interesting battle tonight. So I think for as far as the standings go, we now the top board drew. So those guys will still be at in share first. And board two drew. Nate won and Ryan won. So
So
let's
I
see now.
think Nate and Jordan should have 2 out of 3.
Standings I see Ethan's for some reason they're showing Ethan's at 3. Oh no, I'm looking at the games. Ethan's at 2.5 and Miles at 2.5. Yep. So we have a tie for first between those two as expected, and Jordan is in sole second. Nope, Nate has two as well.
Nate has two,
Yeah.
right?
They're not organizing this by score, but two players on two, and that is Nathan and Jordan.
So I guess next week both of the leaders probably will end up playing both of the players on two, assuming everyone shows up.
I'm
So
not check if they've played each other yet. Yeah, Nate's played Ethan, but so probably Nate will get Miles and Ethan will get Jordan. Those
yeah.
will be some good matchups.
Yes, I mean, two people with 2.5, two with two. So really anyone can win the tournament, right? Like just how
Yeah,
the
so
results
anyone.
might go, we don't know.
There's just one match left, so that'll be a. And you're like, in those four players, they're all like three of them. I believe three of them are masters, and Miles is a very strong player as well.
I think two of
And over
them,
20.
right?
Well, Ethan was 2200.
Oh yeah. Wait, for some reason I was thinking like Connor was in that group, but he was
No,
one of them.
Connor's another. Yeah,
Yeah.
Connor's another player who's gotten very close to master, and I'm sure he'll eventually get there. But
Yeah.
well, those are some fun games. I believe we just have the sponsor to shout out, and that would be Chess Goals. The stream is sponsored by Chess Goals. They are simple chess courses for non-grandmasters. You can learn complete repertoires in under 100 lines. Local national master Matt Jensen, he creates these courses, and you can use the coupon code CASTLE to save 30% on any purchases at chessgoals.com. So definitely take advantage of that. We're thankful for Matt Jensen for sponsoring us in that way. And I believe he will be at this. Don't quote me on this, but I believe he'll be at the Rochester Open because I think he's down from that area. So if any of you are planning to play at the Rochester Open, you might be able to see Matt there. Well, those are a lot of fun games tonight. And unless you have any closing words, I think we'll call it for the night.
Yeah, I think definitely tune in next week. There will definitely be a lot of interesting games in the premiere to see who will win it all. And yeah, a lot of crazy games today as well. So hopefully everyone enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a good time. Thanks for co-commentating with me, and thanks for watching.